Recording in progress.
Okay. All right. Well, we want to welcome all of you. We are in our intensity 5. We are discussing the different levels of intensities. And today we're going to be focused on intensity 5. We've asked one of our students to share. Mr. James is going to share with us what it means for a congregation to be in intensity 5.
Conflict intensity 5. Surprisingly, in many churches today, conflicts arise to the intensity 5 level quite often. Dr. Bullard gives 7 examples of the causes that conflicts could arise to this level, but also hints that there could be possibly more than those 7 examples. Some of the examples he gives are things like the pastor and staff are not doing their best, or personality and relational problems, moral or theological problems between the pastor and staff members, or even examples of power struggles between church leaders and the controlling power group within the congregation. Other examples Dr. Bullard gives are things like ethical issues, diversity of theological or denominational conflicts, and even problems of the congregation not having the ability to deal with a conflict at a level 4 intensity, to which eventually gets worse and becomes in a level 5 conflict. So what is a level 5 conflict? From what I've gathered, and hopefully understand correctly, is that at this level, the congregation is now at an unhealthy level. Unhealthiness is because the congregation will experience many serious casualties. Casualties with the pastor or the staff, as well as casualties as possibly with the congregation itself. If you remember, several weeks ago, I asked, when we were looking at the different intensities that Dr. Bullard gave, why at this level, level 5, there was this idea that there is this lose, leave situation, rather than in the other levels, they were win-lose, win-win, or lose-lose results. Well, I think I have the answer to that, because it seems as though at this level, someone is ultimately terminated and needs to leave the congregation. It could be the pastor, a staff member, or even members of the congregation. By the way, this is the first level in which someone needs to leave the congregation. And because this is also happening at level 6 and 7. But what was more in serious condition is that with this congregation, suffering is more intense. Dr. Bullard gives 3 illustrations of different congregations that have reached the intensity of level 5, and the results are to me, the same thing, in which individuals, whether pastor, staff member, or even a layperson, or persons leaving the congregation. But I think there is more to this idea than just someone leaving the congregation, because it seems that Dr. Bullard is hinting to there is more to the problem than just the termination. I have a feeling that Dr. Bullard is trying to have us be aware that at the end of this intensity 5, it is not the end that where someone leaves the congregation, but that there is more to be worked out in this level. Dr. Bullard is trying to tell us, I think, that at this level, the congregation still needs to deal with the conflict's root cause, or causes for which there are many types of conclusions or resolutions at this level 5. And this is where we come to the idea that Dr. Bullard talks about getting to neutral. He suggests that a third party needs to step in to help resolve many of the problems that have arisen due to the separation or leaving of individuals. The third party is there to help with things that could be difficult or hard to handle because there were many hurts, emotions were out of control, hurt words were spoken, and things even that just were not able to do the same anywhere else. The third party could help with things like severance pay, splitting properties, legal issues that may need to be addressed, and even establishing some clear and firm ground rules. Even the possibility for the need of a covenant of relationship between those that left and those that remain. Dr. Bullard believes that a covenant is essential for both parties to heal, to reconcile, and to be able to develop a future ministry plan. The healing process is not an easy one for anyone to undertake because we are talking about people with different temperaments, different ways of dealing with the hurts they have experienced, and also differences in spiritual and emotional maturity. Dr. Bullard suggests that this healing process should involve lots of prayer in small groups, as well as combining the small groups to a larger group to focus on rebuilding relationships with God, with one another, and the future ministries that they may want to be involved in. This is not a quick fix by any means, for it may take several months or maybe years for the congregation to move forward. After the healing process and the congregation is ready to move forward, Dr. Bullard suggests that the rebuilding of a new future ministry could begin to take shape. He also suggests that at the time of this period of end of the conflict, to the point where at least 10 to 12 months have passed, and the congregation may now be ready to search for and hire a new pastor. Dr. Bullard covers the steps needed to go through this termination process and anything that may be involved with the separation of pastor, staff members, and other individuals that may have legal issues to be settled. He also covers the idea called the repeat offenders, which I connect to the section he called getting to neutral. And the reason I believe that this is a connected idea is because I believe that the congregation that has gone through a level 5 intensity conflict needs to dig deep to find the root cause or causes for the conflict. Believing that the problem has gone away by termination is not necessarily the means to the real problem and has gone with those that have left the congregation. There may at times be other problems that have caused the conflict to begin with, which is why I believe that the congregation really needs to look truly, intently at every aspect of the functioning of the congregation. This includes the governing procedure, expenditures, activities, and other established procedures that moves the congregation forward. The other important factor that I think the congregation needs to look at is the maturity of the individuals of the congregation. This means that the congregation needs to be willing to take the time to commit themselves to self-education, to better themselves in functioning purposes and goals for the whole congregation. I agree with Dr. Bullard's concept that every congregation needs a little conflict because every congregation goes through conflicts. It is whether the congregation grows or withers because of it. Prayerfully, congregations learn how to handle conflict and become more mature, better at doing their ministry, and more effective in serving the Lord. I have experienced many conflicts in my time in ministry, and looking back at times I can think of, I now realize that there are many of them, no, not many, all of them, at some point or other, I could have helped grow better in some way or another if I knew about conflict management. There are many conflicts that I can recall very vividly, but I believe that I do not handle them as I could have I studied this course earlier. The worst conflict I was involved in dealt with two pastors arguing over the control of the church. Each pastor had their own followers, and I was asked for help in the conflict by the pastor that had been earlier had elderlies in their flock. The conflict escalated to well, I can call it a level 7. Yes, a level 7, because it was throwing furnitures, physical abuse, and very foul language. This is the first time I have ever experienced such a behavior in a church. One side of the conflict was those involved would not listen to anyone except their pastor, who was the senior pastor, both in age and seniority. He felt he had the right to be there. The younger pastor insisted that he should be the one to lead in the leadership because there was an agreement made by the two pastors earlier. The agreement was established because the elder pastor wanted to retire. So he called this younger pastor to come from the mainland to take his position. It was agreed upon that the younger pastor came with his family. The congregation at the time was very small, of about 5 to 8 members. I was called at that time to help in the ministry of the church. I volunteered to come and teach the Bible in a study group. I stayed with the group for about a year and left due to being needed elsewhere. Being that I was familiar with the congregation is the reason that I was involved in the conflict. I was asked to come and talk to the senior pastor, but it did not help at all. He even got angrier because I came. I felt as though I was just making the situation worse. And I eventually did not know what to do. Reflecting on this conflict because of this study, I believe that if I had taken this course, I could have helped tone down the conflict. It was happier. It happened so quickly with people from church authority and civilian authority that eventually people were removed, some were arrested, and it quieted down.
Wow.
I visited the congregation a few months later, and the people were so loving as I remember them to be from the beginning of its growth. The young pastor seemed to have gotten more mature by this experience. Our Lord is very active in his body, and we to always look to the chances to work with him wherever we can. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, there's the picture and there's the explanation to us. Thank you, Mr. James. Let's process a lot of this. Let me bring back everybody to our screen. Spotlight. Okay, welcome back. Welcome, Zach. We're talking about intensity number 5, and Mr. James just explained it to us and help us understand Bullard's point on the nature of it and what could happen if it really escalates and the result of it, the likely result of it. At the same time, you gave us some pictures on how it could be managed well so that it would not escalate in a greater degree. All right. So what have you gathered? Any questions or thoughts? Let's start with that before we go to more specifics. Any thoughts or questions to Mr. James and the things that you've heard? Okay. Now sounds like intensity 5, and let's describe it again so that we know. Sounds like intensity 5 is at the time when no longer do they have allies that goes against each other, but now they come to the point. What differentiates them?
Yeah, the point is that there is someone that needs to leave the church, whether it's the pastor, staff member, or even some of the people in the congregation.
So the likely result is one side would leave.
Yes. Resulting in a split in the church, obviously.
Which is by far a painful thing, of course. Yeah. And what idea and I need you to think through this. What are some things? You've mentioned 7, and there may be more. possible and likely issues on why it could escalate to this point. Um, in your what from what you've heard, what drives this intensity?
I think it's the insistence that they are doing right. Dr. Bullard even talks about that, right? And the idea that there are people that do what they think is right, but in actuality it's wrong because it's causing a problem in the congregation. But yet their attitude is, we're doing what is right. We're doing something that is supposedly to help the congregation, but in actuality it's hurting the congregation more than helping.
Now think through that for the meantime, because that's, I think, is a cue on how to de-escalate. We think we're helping, but really we're hurting.
That's where self-examination is. So, I talked about that and the idea that there needs to be this self-examination. I think our churches need to self-examine themselves individually and collectively to see where they're going. Are their ministries, are their focus really helping the church, or is it hurting the church? Because a lot of times I think we don't look at ourselves. We're only looking at the bad people.
Yeah, and we're busy doing that.
We think it's bad. Yeah, exactly. We're the bad people. Them, the other guys.
Right. Yes. We could be so consumed with that too.
I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we are, especially at level 5. I think they are sold out on the idea that they're doing what is right. And that's why eventually, if the pastor leaves, people follow him and go with him because they believe that they're doing what is right.
Welcoming a conversation on Intensity 5 sounds impossible, but it is not, is it?
If the people are mature enough to listen, right? So the idea is that we have to listen and really evaluate ourselves. I'll be honest, we have to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think even individually, there are times when people are individually hurting the church or hurting others to themselves. No, I'm doing what is right.
Yeah.
And maybe they need to be hurt because I'm doing what is right.
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't hurt to have spiritual leaders stand up and be a model to this. I think when you have so much individuals wanting to step up and lead the charge, or at least be a part of an ally, we're setting up models that are unhealthy. And because it is unhealthy, someone has to step in and say, that's not a good trait to follow at this moment, at this time. Let us do option B. And for that very person to insist on option B would be somehow have to be perceived with one of authority and one of example, because it's, you're going to follow a person, an individual, and what makes you even a better example than the other, right? I mean, who's there to say you're better than the other? Especially, remember now, this is intensity, are we at 4, 5? 5. This is intensity 5. It's cloudy already inside the room, right? Yeah. It's hard to see and identify the Christ-like model we need to hear from.
So Dr. Bullard's illustration was the river, and one side, I think he called it the east side, was flooding, and the west side was looking at them flooding and saying, well, they were given warning. They knew about everything else. They knew that the weather was going to cause this flood to come.
Yeah.
So we're not to blame about it. They're at fault.
Yeah.
And that's what Dr. Bullard says in that illustration. That the idea is that we're not doing anything wrong. They're just doing because they weren't aware, they weren't ready, or whatever it is.
And it's their problem because we've done our part.
Exactly.
Mm,
We prepared, we got all the sandbags and all that stuff that we needed.
yeah. And more so like we've warned you.
Yeah.
We've told you. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Johnny and Bev are really, really quiet. You know what the Bible, you know what the saying says, when there's still waters, it means it's deep. Right, Johnny, Bev? It's deep. You're thinking too much. Go ahead and spill it out over here and converse with us. Zach, welcome into the conversation.
Good evening.
Yes. Good evening.
Sorry,
All right, speak to us. Anything you'd like to go ahead.
yeah, can you just do the presentation all over again?
Sure, Zach, anytime.
It's already recorded, Zach. You can listen to it all night long.
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's examine the nature. And we're right now we're looking at the nature of it because when Bullard explains to us the idea of this as graphically as possible, it's scary. And he even gives us 3 illustrations. He continues to use and compound on this illustration of which starts with the music minister and the worship leader. And the other one is the Sunday school curriculum that didn't work well. And the other one is what? Leadership and something.
2 individuals.
Yeah, 2 individuals and the leadership management. So, and now it's escalated to a group of people, and now it's escalated to hurting each other in words, right? This is still level 5. Am I correct? Yeah. So, chime with us, Johnny, Bev, and Zach. I need to hear what you're all thinking.
This intensity is, from what I caught at the ending, was like it's gonna lead to a split. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, like I guess what went through my mind is when it's from a deep rooted brewing problem, conflict that's like been in the church for so long that it doesn't seem like there's a way. If you are like, first of all, it's gonna be even hard to even have a dialogue or like a conversation about anything because everything is so deeply rooted on both sides. And I think it comes to whether or not both sides would be willing to put that ego aside and really try to have a mindset that leads to unity, like in a same mind and soul, or same mind and spirit. But then that's still hard. Like that's better. It's easier said than done. But when it comes to like splitting, then yeah, I feel like that's I don't know what to say about that.
No, you're definitely right. That is it's hard to respond to it, but that's the reality of this level of intensity 5. Now, refresh some of your thinking. Sometimes intensity 5 is not a war zone at all. However, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. Intensity 1 crisis is managed because the fact that both people are talking, right? But then it becomes an intensity 5 jumps up because one person says, well, since I can't get I can't get to a point here, I'm gonna leave the church. That makes sense? No fire, no nothing. Just all of a sudden, where's brother so and so? And the story later on goes, well, he had something, he had a difference of opinion with pastor, and pastor said, well, you better leave. And so he left. That's the result of intensity 5, but they didn't have the nature of intensity 5. But it's so calm and so peaceful, but yet still ended up with somebody leaving. That makes sense.
I think it happens.
It happens. In fact, a lot of people probably would even kind of keep it this way, but not really knowing that it has come to that point of, I'm going to leave instead because we can't agree on anything.
Pastor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
On that note, with that being said, the decision to leave, was it that person or the pastor's decision to tell that person to leave?
Oh, boy.
And
Well,
the other question would be, wouldn't that be
Wow.
an exercise of authority? Like, for instance, in my culture, it's very hard when you would assume that the elders would have a say in almost everything.
mhm. All right. Well, that's a good question. Well, we know the reality is this. Yeah, that it could be leader directed or it could be a member decision. In whatever case, still somebody leaves. So now the question is, maybe the best question to ask, and I'm not running away from your questions. It sounds like I'm running away.
Or maybe I'm just
maybe
asking
another
the
way
wrong
to ask
question.
it is it right for a leader to say to a person, yeah, is it right for a leader to say to a person, well, since we can't agree, go find another place to serve?
Yeah, and then on that note, where do we fit in Ephesians 4? Make every effort to keep the unity. And the peace. I mean, I think on one of the intensity levels speaks about a party has to understand that somebody's gotta lose. A party has to understand that.
Sorry, Beth. Could you try that again?
With that being said, like when a pastor tell somebody to leave because of disagreement, where do we fit in Ephesians 4? Make every effort to keep the unity in the spirit through the bond of peace. Okay. Can you still hear me, Pastor?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, our connection here is. I'm gonna really fix this connection. Okay. Let's see if I'm back. Okay. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. And Bev, could you count 1 to 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, we got, I think we're connected now. Okay, let's pick that up again on the concern that you brought up, Bev. As a leader, telling someone else to leave, and you quoted the scripture verse. So go ahead and pick that up again.
Yes. Where do we fit in Ephesians 4 in that sense? Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit to the bond of peace. I think in one of the intensity level, the other did mention that one party has to, or we have to know that this is going to be, somebody's going to have to lose. I'm sorry,
Right.
that's just questions going on in my head right now, but I could be wrong.
No, you're right. The question is part of the formula to keep peace means to move people away or to push them away.
And also,
Right.
she's asking, is it right for the pastor or the leader or the elder to ask someone to leave?
Okay, that's a fair question to ask. So hopefully we're not talking about theological or doctrine, because if it is, then just maybe the leaders have warrant to discipline individuals for that matter.
Mm.
Okay.
And
if-
not only that, right? What if that person did something unethical, right? Immoral, right? So that's
Alright,
totally
so-
against the Bible teaching.
Right. So those are two given points. Look like all of us could easily swallow that. So let's go to the harder points. Well, our brother wants a red carpet. I want a blue. You know how it is.
Or even like, maybe worship style or, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And would it be right for the pastor to say, well, no, this is the way we're doing it. So if you don't like it, then pack up and go.
Okay. Fair question. Let's what do you all think? I mean, where do we draw the line? If you were, and not just isolate the pastor. Let's talk about us. When is it fair? Or is it even fair to bring that up? And if not, well, let's not go to the second part. Let's just process that part. So we don't see eye to eye when it comes to worship.
I think when it comes to intensity 5, we already passed the stage. So to your point, Beth, I mean, if it's about disagreement, it should have been resolved when the intensity was lower. When it was intensity 1 or 2, you should have been resolved. But when it comes to intensity 5, and if those things were not resolved, there must be something that's more complicated than that. Meaning that it was not resolved in the first place and things keep getting more complicated. Because nobody resolved it, they were not seeing eye to eyes, and then people become more emotional. They're not looking at the subject anymore. Things kind of balloon to something much bigger than that, right? So if it's only about a disagreement about the carpet color, it should have been resolved when you were still staying in intensity 1 or 2. But when you came to this point, intensity 5 is already past the stage.
Right, I agree with what you're saying, Johnny. But the idea that Pastor is bringing up is that what happens if it just does not go through 1 or 2, but just gets up to 5 and says someone has to leave without all of the conflict.
Fireworks.
And says somebody has to leave. Is that still approval or agreed upon, or is it good?
And let me tell you, I think this is more realistic than a congregation splitting because of and when I say I'm a lot more realistic, I think this happens a lot more prevalent. This happens prevalent, a lot more, because how many of us can say, brother so and so is gone? I mean, no conflict, no fireworks, no allies, but just God. And only to find out, brother so and so talked to so and so and they didn't agree, and so he just felt he just needed to leave. There's the result of an intensity 5, not in the nature of intensity 5.
But it happens.
It happens, right?
And so the question is,
Bev brings up where is that in this passage? I mean, when especially a leader is the one imposing for an individual to leave. So I guess what we're trying to say, Bev, is in fairness to pushing people to leave, we should not even make that as an option.
But we already said it happens. So how do we deal with it if it has happened?
I'm
know what saying?
guessing where Brother Johnny is coming from. I understand what you're talking about, Johnny. I guess it all depends. It all boils down to the nature of the intensity of the reasoning why the pastor would have to say that. If the morals and the ethics are not biblical, then of course I understand.
There comes the church discipline, right? Church discipline.
Yes. So does the pastor have the authority to just tell the person to leave? Or is there going to be something like that, like church disciplining in a matter of counseling first, or have the church vote on things like, decision like that? Or does the pastor?
Can I share one experience with all you folks? This happened probably a couple of decades ago, maybe 3 decades ago, when one church member became violent to a point that he was cursing and he was getting physical violent. So the church decided to cancel his membership because he was out of control, despite many times that we tried to convince him, but he was not listening. He was becoming physically, violent, like I said, right? So I believe at that time, the church had to exercise the church discipline, right? By saying that, I'm sorry, I mean, if you cannot change your behavior and you're doing something that's harmful to the church, brothers and sisters, we have to let you go. I mean, based in terms of membership, right? So I believe that was the right thing to do at that time. I don't know if this is a good example for Beth's question, but I just want to share that so that you see the point that, hey, it did happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I understand it. Of course, it happens. It will happen, and it still happens probably nowadays. It's just questioning whether the pastor has that authority, or yeah, I understand it. It's going to be depending on the nature of that kind of disciplinary action. Thank you, Johnny.
There is also the idea that if a pastor does not get along with an individual, the pastor tries to remove that individual's membership from the church. That has happened also.
Right. And Bev, in fairness to your question, each church, they have their own church polity. And under your constitution and bylaws have policies on how to dismember an individual, not dismember. What's the right word? Excommunicate, discipline, dismember. That's not a good word. Yeah, to discipline an individual, right? And so study your bylaws, because normally they would. And where I would go further than our bylaws would be going through that process of counseling the individual. And I'm sure, Johnny, in the nature of what you've said, I'm sure there's that counseling that went through that. Finally, the leaders just have to come to a point where this is not going to be fixed. Now, Zach, I really need you to chime in, and this is very important because I've seen this happen, probably not recently, but in some distant past, where our deacons are the ones stepping out of the church because they're not in eye to eye with the pastor or with the staff. Just most recently too, I've heard well, we've asked our pastor to take care of this, and he has not done anything. So, and we're not growing. And so we're just moving out of the church. And there we lose 2 deacons in the church because staff, if not pastors, didn't do, as claimed, didn't do anything to address their issue. What I'm trying to bring up to you is the result of an intensity 5, but not in the nature of intensity 5. And let's hope and pray that, because it's very subtle. You know, it's easier to fight a fire with the smoke. It's difficult when there's no smoke and all of a sudden the house is burnt. Right? What happened? Where's so and so? Right? And because and then the story goes like this. All right, let's go to that section where how do we deal with the most, not how do we deal, but the most likely result of an intensity 5. You mentioned leave, win or leave, or is it lose leave? Lose leave. Okay, and qualify that again, that statement, meaning
It means that, well, the congregation is unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, somebody leaves, but still the congregation is suffering
Right.
because it's unhealthy.
It's unhealthy. Yeah. Or it could be the other way around too, that some of the congregations leave and
Right.
the
Either way, yeah.
leader stays. And so in any shape, way, or form, this leaving doesn't make anyone win.
No.
Yeah. And again, the most likely to resolve intensity 5 is let's come together and let's discuss. Let's come together and keep it together and focus on the matter that is on hand. Bullard talks about the nature of this leading. Sometimes it is in the fact that leaders get together and they talk about firing the pastor, or what's the word that was used?
Terminate.
Terminating the pastor, or terminating the staff, or for Johnny's illustrations, terminating the membership of an individual. Right? The idea is someone leaving, and whether it is in the nature of forced leaving, or on a grand scale, or on a private saying you better leave because we're not going to be able to figure this out. Someone leaves, no one wins. Someone leaves, no one wins. Where do we win? When all of us stay together and work this through out. All right. Now, here's another question to ask you all. How do we resolve the leaving issue? What could be means and ways? And Bullard mentions a great deal of this word, and I'll mention it to you and you respond. He uses the word neutral or neutrality. Okay, let's work on that, because maybe you have issues like this that are intensity 5 and it needs to move forward. How do we heal from this? And he uses the word neutrality. Want to explain a little, and then we can chime in.
What Dr. Bullard says as far as the neutrality part is that where an outsider comes in that has no, not an inkling, but the idea is that he's not going to take either side. So that's where the neutrality comes in, where he's not going to take sides and he's going to just try and resolve the situation as best he can by either getting the servants pay done, whatever needs to be done to get the termination done as peacefully as possible.
He uses the word consultant or arbitrator.
Yeah.
Someone neutral from outside.
Right.
Yeah, give me a response to that. Have you had any conflicts, or have you seen conflicts where an outside agency had to be brought in, and so is that healthy? When is it not become healthy? In what's the nature of these arbitrators in order for them to be respected within the common ground of discussion? give us your inputs on this.
I think the congregation, by watching those that come in as supposedly quote unquote neutral,
Mm.
they watch to see whether they are neutral or not, whether they take sides or not.
Mhm.
Because if they take sides, then it becomes more
Not
of a
neutral.
problem. Yeah, it becomes not a neutral thing.
Right.
And so even in our situation, we asked outsiders to come in and we observed whether they were really neutral or not.
Right.
And so, there was discussion as to, well, certain individuals kind of sided with one side. So we were questioning that whether they were really neutral or not.
Yeah. So, Howard, what do you think? In the essence, in the nature of neutrality, or bringing in someone from the outside.
Well, I think when there is a conflict in church or any place there's a conflict, especially in church, I think you should bring out an outside party because that person should be neutral and should be.
That should
Not
be,
that they will be, but they'll come in and they can have a discussion, a healthy discussion to resolve the issue.
Could you keep the conversation going?
So I think it is very important that we have this neutrality. Somebody comes in and but we have to find where can we get that person.
yeah. As far as getting the person though, like in my situation where I was involved in this conflict, I was called in because the person that called me in was my friend, but he felt that I could be neutral. But because the other pastor knew that I was the friend of the one that called me, he was more angry about the whole situation that I came, even though I was trying to help.
I had a question about like oh wait, I don't know if I can hear them anymore. Can you guys hear them?
Oh, I cannot hear them all of a sudden.
Oh. Yeah, me too.
I can't see Pastor Bong either.
Yeah, I
think
think he
he
had like a
stepped out.
FaceTime. Yeah. But what do you call that? I wanted to bring up a conversation. Like if you're part of the conflict, right? And like you're on one of the two sides, and then you guys bring in someone neutral, how can you aren't you still gonna be kind of biased whether or not on no matter what the take is on the neutral person? So whatever the neutral person's take is on the whole conflict, how can you tell that they're neutral if you're already on one side of it? If you're already on one side of the conflict, I feel like no matter what you see, or not no matter what you see, like depending on the outcome, you can still have a biased thought on their take on whoever's neutral, the neutral party. Would that be like something to bring up, or is that, do you kind of get what
Well,
I'm saying or no?
I think if I'm gonna bring in somebody, right, and of course that somebody should not be a close friend of mine, or should not be related to me in any ways, and the other party, must be in agreement with me, right, before I bring that neutral person on board, right? So both parties have to be in agreement before we can bring somebody neutral to handle the situation, right?
In a way,
So
it's
even-
kind of
yeah.
almost. I'm sorry, Johnny.
No, go ahead.
I'm thinking about, like how people do jury duty in court.
Yeah.
They have to bring in neutral people and try to just be there and observe, because sometimes in life you gotta just get a different opinion or an outside view to realize your mistake and where, or to hear other options than just those two solid opinions that are in collide with each other.
Yeah, I could see that.
And also, before we decide to bring the person on board, maybe there should be an interview process between the both parties to talk to this person before we decide, okay, this is neutral, this person is neutral enough, right? So before we say, hey, yeah, this is the person, maybe I will give you an opportunity to ask him questions and I'll ask him questions before we agree, okay, this is the right person.
Also, what if it becomes, say the option, maybe they give an option, the neutral person gives an option, but it's sort of leaning towards the other side in a way. Would that still be a problem with the whole conflict when if the opposing side kind of gets more of their views incorporated to the solution, and then would that kind of fizzle out if the other side is like, no, never mind, he's not a good neutral, is not a good person for this conflict? I don't
They
know.
might think that. They might
Yeah.
think that. Yeah. Like, oh, that person so and so is more on their side, therefore he's not really listening to what I have to say.
Yeah.
He just taking that guy's opinion because he likes his opinion. I
Mm.
can see that. I can see that happening in conflicts and other
Like if it was to play
situations.
out, yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry, my street is so loud. Like people are ramping their engine. Somebody passed away, but Ever Beach
Oh, I
lifestyle
can hear.
of
No, I can hear it.
yeah.
Yeah,
cannot hear.
I cannot hear.
Oh, they're really loud. They rev their engines and their motorcycles.
Wow.
That's how they celebrate funerals, I guess, over here. But
Oh,
I apologize for the loud background.
Sorry.
yeah. And then Johnny, for the person that got violent, is it like did you have to get police involved, or like they just stopped
Yeah,
after?
it did
Oh,
happen. Yeah, it did involve police at one point.
oh wow.
Oh wow. Got really intense and to that point,
Yeah. And then we found out that he has some mental disturbance. I think that was the
Oh.
cause. That was the cause for his violent behavior. Yeah. But he
Okay,
couldn't
now I
control.
have
But he
another
couldn't.
question. So
Yeah.
would the church still be doing like, okay, so like when you say that it involves physical, we immediately jump to conclusion. Like I jump to a conclusion, like that's already crossing the line, that's already physical. But then when you mention mental health, that's a really big problem. Is there like some sort of leniency for that person because he has that problem?
We didn't know that at first.
I see.
Yeah, we didn't know that at first. Yeah, it was so violent to a point that we tried to downplay it. We tried to downplay it, and we tried to be considerate. We tried to accommodate.
Right.
We tried to talk to him, but nothing worked. Right. And things were, I believe, as I recall, because many years ago, long time ago.
Right.
As I recall, people did what they could to make the situation better, but it wasn't working. And then only after we found out, I think it's more like a speculation. We believe that it was a mental issue that's involved, but I'm talking about 30 years ago. So it's not easy to seek that kind of help at that time, and people usually would not admit that kind of issue. Yeah, so that was the problem.
I see. Okay, now I can kind of understand.
Yeah.
But at least the church tried to, de-escalate and try to understand that person's situation.
I recall that the leadership did.
Yeah. And then, but then if it's going to be a continued thing that will cause disruption to the church and disturbance, then of course, actions needed to be done.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. It's an issue for safety. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Also had I wanted to bring up like say I kind of joined the church and say like there was a past conflict and you kind of are coming in. Oh, you feel the residual results of a past conflict between members, and then since you're like new, you don't know what's going on or what really happened in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and then so you're just kind of like stuck there, and then you don't know.
Right, but then you can feel the vibe.
Yeah, you can
You
feel
can.
it. Yeah, and then it gets like, you know how so in intensity 4 there's like
Mhm.
a thing too where they says is like there's voting with like participation in certain
Mhm, mhm.
activities.
Yeah.
So then I feel like there's that was a eye opener because I could see that, and then um but then I still think it's like something that was from like a intensity 1 or 2 or 3 problem that I wasn't able to see or witness or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And
You
then
know, with that kind of tension, I would assume that it was not resolved properly, or it was not addressed where, people can be back to how they feel and how they were before as unity in the church.
mm,
So they were just like, okay, let's put our differences aside and go to church just for the sake of going to church, and but in reality they both know that they were in quarrel with each other. You know what I mean?
yeah. So they
But
kind of put
then,
like a band-aid on a
yeah, yeah.
big laceration wound.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
then it's still kind of bleeding
Yes.
out.
Yeah, still bleeding out. It was not sewn together properly to heal
Yeah.
properly. Yeah. Interesting. Mm. Is Pastor Bob? I can see
Pastor
them,
Bar, you
but
got you got it you got it working?
Yeah, we got it working. You're good. We can hear you. Sorry, I'm just reconnecting things. Okay, hang on. Because some of us are hard in hearing, so we need to hear you guys a little louder. Hang on. Forgot what I'm gonna do. I need to connect you to the Bluetooth. Okay. Okay, hang on. And, all right. Okay, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yes.
It still didn't connect. That's fine. Okay. So I'm glad you're having these conversations, because a lot of this can, again, the absence of the fireworks doesn't minimize the intensity. Is to be sniffers, is to sniff the smoke. On your case, Zach, is to be a CSI and say, why do I see a trail of smoke here, right? Okay, because maybe some people have wanted to address it, could not address it, but left. But then you're coming in and you go, I don't see any problem here. But then, which is what Bullard have kept on insisting, that if you don't hammer into the issue, no matter how a congregation wants to move forward and bring in a new staff, the problem is still there.
We call it a repeater.
The repeater, it becomes a dysfunctional congregation, because it sees its behavior healthy, but it's killing itself. And unfortunately, those of us who are coming on board may not see the full picture. We see part of the picture and we see a healthy picture, but given a chance of having some conversations, we begin to see, okay, there's got to be something missing here that I need to know more. Now, so there it is once more. And by the way, he gives us a, if you were the conflict managers, he gives you some really practical hands-on steps to take. I appreciate him being bold in saying this. He says probably it will take you 6 months. Normally books like this are non-prescriptive in that detail, but you know, he's not a doctor for nothing. He says probably 4 to 6 months. And he even says there's no guarantee that after 12 months, things are still going to go well. Right. By him stating a timeline makes you understand, boy, this is really a big deal. Yeah. Respond to that timeline that he proposes. Because as arbitrators and as consultants, as people who would come in from outside or you've been invited in, we have the, and Johnny, you've probably experienced this. We have the, come on, let's solve this now, let's move forward. But being it in intensity 5 tells you the damage within the wound has opened up, that sometimes it takes a few months, if not a year, to heal that wound. Your quick response to timelines.
So he says that if you don't heal the wound, you can't move forward. You can't have, as he called it, planned ministry, planned focused ministry. And he also says that it's best not to hire pastor at that time. It's best to wait till you've gone through the time of healing to try to be able to start looking for a new pastor.
You ready to tell that to your pastor search?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sorry to put you guys on the spot, but
Yeah.
no, it is crucial. How do you say that, Lovey? Because could you imagine the revolt of maybe a few of the congregation to say, what? We're going to wait that long?
But then the question would be, you know, would you want to have to go through the same process all over again, the whole conflict all over again with another one? You know, because we want to hurry it on, we may end up having to have another conflict that we have to go through. I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, certainly not. Certainly not. Now, okay, here's a harder question, and guys, chime in on this. Okay, you're saying we can move maybe 4 to 6 months, least 4 to 6 months, most would be 12 months. And you're telling us that there's dysfunctionality here. Tell me what you mean by that. And being pragmatic enough, objective enough to get to the matter as opposed to not to the people, is going to be a challenge. Can you hear my hesitancy? I'm even hesitant to talk about this. All right, let's just say we're the church. Okay, we're the church. It's us against you guys, online against in person. Because you know, being in person, it makes you a better student than the online person. We just made allies right here. Okay, we just made allies. Okay, and so we're saying, okay, we're in intensity 5, and it's either you leave and we stay. That's the nature of it. And we're saying, okay, let's solve this issue. And part of the issue is, guys, because we've hit personality, we've stabbed you at the back, and you've done the same way with us, this is going to take a while to solve the issue. So we're probably not, we're probably going to neutralize this in a sense where We're going to sign a covenant. We're probably going to say, okay, we stop talking about negative things to people. Is that fair? Okay. Yeah, that could be a good beginning ground. That could be one of the items that we could both agree on.
So no personal attacks kind of thing? No personal.
Yeah, because if it's an issue in a matter, then it's no longer a person.
Mm.
Wow. That is, okay, that's huge. That's one. Well, what are some other objective things we can agree on?
What about when conversation starts going, what about like the I guess the volume and the tonnage? Is that gonna be something you just let it go?
Okay, it's good parameter there. Whatever you say it nicely. That okay? Is that fair, Zach? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. You don't really need to, you can say without having tone and volume, but you can still clearly get your point across.
That's a fair parameter. Yeah. Johnny, what would you impose?
I would say that if we want to continue to work together, to whatever extent, every opportunity that we have to meet, there must be a third person to facilitate. So throughout the meeting, there has to be some ground rules, meaning that, hey, one person must listen first, and before he can say anything, just listen first. And I mean, just like what I said, there has to be some ground rules that need to be established. But every meeting requires a facilitator, someone that can help neutralize the topic and the subject. That is if both sides still want to work together.
Okay.
If both sides do not want to work together,
sounds like a lot of work for the
that's out of the question.
neutral guy. Yeah.
Wait, I have an idea. What if as we take turns from both sides, what if we have to restate what the other side has said in a way that shows them that they understand your point before speaking on their side, what they want to say afterwards as a response?
Okay. Like, parrot what I said. Did you already understand what I said? Kind of thing.
That way, it kind of takes away that natural tendency to think of your answer while they're speaking, think of your comeback while they're speaking, but instead you have to make sure you have to process what they're saying. So you have to restate it, and then when you restate it, it has to align with what the opposing side feels like you really do understand it, or you really
Like you have,
get the
they
point.
have to, you have to affirm that that is exactly your point.
Yeah.
That's where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes there could be a different point of view, different way of how I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So miscommunication, it becomes a
Right.
obstacle. Yeah.
I like that.
Good.
I like that idea.
Clarify, quantify, qualify. Yeah. And don't
a
assume
really
that
good
they heard what you're saying, because sometimes probably they have not. Bev, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with Zach. I think that's a really good way of trying to de-escalate it, or trying to de-escalate the situation by not, how do we put this in words? Now I'm lost. But I think I get what you're saying, Zach, and I like that idea. But sometimes when intensity is at this level, they are both heated, and there's really not much time for both sides to calm down and try to understand and in a more calm manner. Like, no, this is what I'm saying, and I think this is right. You know, it's so tense that they
Yeah.
don't have that time to be on that level. So I'm guessing it's very important to pray for intensity 5 when we're at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And using humbling words as opposed to inflated words, right? Like you all.
Mhm.
No, it's only one person. It's not a.
Mhm.
Or like, there you are again. You always do this. Wait, no. Probably we didn't do it all the time. Maybe it's just one time. Okay, 10
Mm.
times, but not 20. Okay, fair enough. Any other questions or thoughts on?
Well, how about this? Everybody involved has to go to Pastor Bond's conflict management class this time around. That's a
That's
requirement.
easy. We just refer them.
Right. See you all after a semester. We'll solve your problem.
Yeah, we'll help you recruit more students.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hey, Johnny, are you ready to share?
Yeah, I am.
Could you share at least maybe a 15-minute, and then we'll pick up your material again next week?
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Is it okay if I share my screen? Because I do have my PowerPoint.
Yeah, hang on. All right. We're still recording, I believe. Good, we are. Hang on. Okay, go ahead, Johnny.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is about the 6th intensity of conflict. Brother James already talked about intensity 5. And to be honest with you, the only one layer that I'm going to add on it, because he said it so well, the only one layer that I'm going to add to it is about the fact that the 6th intensity of conflict is about discrediting our enemies. So that's really the key point here. Let me just give everyone a summary before I get into different sessions. So the summary here, intensity 6, it involves the pursuit of people beyond the former congregation and focuses on their lack of spiritual integrity. So as you remember, the intensity 5 is about, okay, losing and leaving, right? But for this particular intensity, it's one level up, right? And it's about it's basically a lose-lose situation. So somehow the person, let's say the pastor left the church, but the congregation would not let go. They will keep pursuing the person because they believe the person is an enemy. They believe the person did something wrong. So they would go as far as going to the convention, or maybe going to the church that the pastor ended up going to say bad things about him, to discredit him. So that's really about this intensity. So like I say, it's a lose-lose situation for everyone involved. I like to think that, like what the author was saying, it does not occur often. So typically, if you look at intensity 5, if the group of people leave the congregation, that's the end of the story, right? But in this case, the majority of people, the congregation, decide to continue to pursue the situation beyond intensity 5 conflict. So that will cause more pain and more stress. And then for those who carry this on beyond intensity 5, they tend to have some kind of spiritual and emotional issues that must have caused them to lose perspective and become dysfunctional in their behavior. So for this intensity, it's possible for attorneys or arbitrators to get involved for legal actions against the person or people whom they perceive as enemies. And the ultimate goal for this intensity conflict is about getting to neutral, because the damage is done. It's really a lose-lose situation. It's hard to believe that anything. It's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that it can be salvaged. So, what would be the general examples of the causes for intensity 6? It's basically about personal animosities between people, between persons who may have known each other inside the congregation or community. Number 2, like I said, let's say the congregation continue to pursue their enemy. They will attempt to withdraw the ordination credentials of the pastor. That would be an intensity 6 conflict. Accusations of biblical or ecclesiastical heresy could also be intensity 6 conflict. People in pursuit seek to end not only the relationship of a person to the local congregation, but to the denomination as well. Number 4, it also could be immorality or legal issues that become supported by public evidence available to the congregation. It also could be some kind of moral or ethical position that the pastor or somebody that is opposed by the congregation. Number 6, it could be individuals with intense anger showing signs of psychological disorder that's causing this conflict, or as their supporters may also follow their lead. The last one here, property title dispute arises when a congregation seeks to separate from its denomination. So this would be the general causes or examples of the causes for intensity 6. Any questions so far? Do I still have 5 minutes left, Pastor Bong?
Keep it for the moment.
Okay.
I'd like us
All right.
to just do some quick discussions on this, and then we'll close in prayer.
Okay.
And so the idea that we fire so much arsenal to the other group, right? Let's just process how we understand intensity 6 and how severe it is. Okay.
Individuals are so bitter that they're going to go after the ones that left.
Yeah. So the person is already fired, it's already terminated, but they still go after the person to pursue the situation. That's basically what it is, to discredit him.
Yes, in other words, it's almost like he wants revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting out of control, right? It's the congregation is losing perspective. There's totally emotional, totally irrational, I would say.
And even to the point where even the person who left probably will say bad things about where he came from and bring it wherever he goes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose. It's a lose-lose. Yeah,
Right.
it's not lose-leave. It's lose-lose, right? Okay, would you like me to talk about the next slide, how to address intensity 6 conflict, or you still have more to discuss?
Yeah, let's leave your last part for next week. I really want us to marinate on this because but we're hurt. We're hurt. It's normal to speak about what you're hurt with and what's wrong with that. You know, and I have a lady who came in today in the office saying that so-and-so is moving his membership. I said, okay. Well, and she said, shouldn't we explain why this person is moving to that congregation? And shouldn't we explain to that congregation that this person is like this and like that, and like give a reference character? And I was like, no. I mean, and a lot of people think it this way, that shouldn't we even defend ourselves for this person moving away? What if he tells this church about us, and what if and there it is, you're not just done creating allies within your fight. Now the fight's over, you've moved on, and now you're still creating havoc by by telling other people how bad the place you came from, or vice versa, the other way around.
Yeah, John used the word discrediting. Yeah?
Yeah, that church is really bad. Don't go there.
Right.
My question to you is that not warranted? I mean, the guy's hurt.
It may be warranted, but I think we should refrain from it. As you try to be mature, I think that's part of the maturity level, to try and refrain from carrying on as far as discrediting. I would think.
So you're trying to say is, even though it's right, it may not be
right.
healthy
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Okay.
Bev, what do you think? Zach, what do you think? Mr. Howard, I know you're thinking deep again.
I don't know if you can control, like say someone leaves. I don't know what can you do, like, to control what they say about the whole situation. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of up in the air for them to.
Yeah. I don't think you can control the other person. The only thing you can do is control yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to focus on, is ourselves and what we say or not say.
What we can control is what, yeah. And you know, the matter is, if it is us, the matter is, why does it really heal the wound by opening up the bandage again?
No.
Right. Yeah. That is difficult, because
I think that could become gossiping too, right? Because you know how people like to say it this way. Oh, let me tell you about the person who just left our church. You know, I want to tell you that so that you can pray for him.
Yeah.
I want to tell you all about him, right? So that, I think we are so, you know, that the devil will work in our minds to say that, hey, let's just say that. But in actuality, that's actually gossiping.
Yeah, let's pray for that person, because he did this and he did that.
I mean,
Right.
let God be the judge if you truly believe in the Bible, right? Rather than you being the judge to tell people about him. Yeah, that's what I would think.
There's so much to learn, and so much to reflect on that. How do we coach? How do we disciple our people? How do we disciple our people not to shout ouch too loud when they're hurting? Other than telling them to come to the class. Right? I mean, because I'm discipling a few people, and I really have to catch. This is the beauty of discipleship. The beauty of discipleship is you're not teaching, you're showing how this is done, right? And best way to do this is not in a classroom, nor me not preaching. It's when I hang out with everybody. And then they catch me and I catch them. When people catch me and like, you're not supposed to say that, I say, you know what? You're right. I apologize. Now it's my turn. Hey, you're not supposed to say that. Well, what's wrong with what I said? Okay, wait. We're supposed to disciple each other now, right? And how difficult is that to teach people? I know you're hurting, but it may be improper for you when you share that to others. And to say to individual, just keep it to yourself, probably is not even helpful. Maybe just to say, maybe this is better kept within us as a family, rather than exposing our dirty laundries outside.
Individual, not family.
Yeah. I remember a time when we had some difficulties with pastors, and all of a sudden, that church was surrounded by other pastors of the community. You go, how did that get there? How did the news get there that fast, right? And you go, wow, okay. All right, any other thoughts? I'd really like to hear from some of you.
You know, when you use that scenario where somebody corrects you when you're wrong, sometimes we are so stuck in our ego that we refuse to admit that we are wrong. And sometimes just a simple confession, and when you admit that you're wrong, you know, that's the author says it will save you a whole lot of counseling sessions if you could just admit, you know, where you went wrong, and, you know, in almost humility, just try to be mature in your, I guess, opinions.
Now, what if a church is asking for background information from the person that had come from your church, and you know you have some good stuff to say, not just positive, good stuff, but also negative. When do you?
I guess if the church comes to us or come to my church, is that what you're asking? To ask about this person's background information?
Right.
Oh yeah, then I have to be truthful. Let's say if the other church is thinking about hiring this person or maybe bring this person on board as a member, then I guess they have the right to ask his references, right? To understand, you know, how this person was like, you know, in the other church. And then for that, I would tell them the truth.
But that doesn't happen in some cases. So if, for instance, that person leaves the church because of conflict, and then we are just talking about gossiping, yeah, we don't want to, you know, you don't want to gossip about the person, but then you go and the church question you what really happened, and, you know, want to know some background.
Yeah, I guess
Then
it depends
think,
on. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Johnny.
No. I'll let you finish first. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, okay. I think that person, if they are not speaking truthfully, then they would fall into the category of gossiping about that church. Wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I was
But
thinking
yeah, it all comes
when
down
Pastor
to
Bond,
speak truthfully.
yeah, when Pastor Bond say background, it depends on what you mean by background, Pastor Bond. I mean, his history, the person's history, or, you know, his spiritual
Or
status.
are they trying to gather such information to, like, for him to be a member or to be a staff, or because I think it grounds for the church does have the right to ask if the person is going to be, say, in one of the committees, in one of the ministries, then yeah, of course we would want to know more about that person.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's say the other church heard rumors about him, right? And they want to verify it, right? They said, hey, I heard something about this person who's coming to my church, but I want to verify with you guys, you know, because he used to go to your church. Can you help me to verify if this is true or not? I mean, they could do that, right? The other church could come to the other church to ask those questions.
But if it is because of gossip that he's coming to ask, then is it right to continue?
Or they heard somebody said that and they're not sure. It might be, you know. Yeah, and they come to me just to verify it. So are you saying that should I even bother? Because is that what you're saying? Sorry.
No, I'm asking because you said that it was because of a gossip that someone heard something about an individual that's coming to your church. And so now they want to verify whether that is true or not, right? So
Yeah.
then should you answer?
Mhm. Somebody gossiped, somebody told them that, or somehow they heard it.
Yeah,
And then this church came to me and said they heard the gossip, or they heard
Right.
something. They don't know if it's, maybe the other person is gossiping. I don't know, but they heard something, and then they came to me and said, "Hey, since you go into this church, I heard this. Can you verify if it's true or not?"
right.
So for me to tell the person based on what I know, based on the facts that I know, to me, I'm not sure if it's gossip, because they asking me to verify something that they heard. They asked me if this is what's happened at this church, and I'm just gonna tell them yes or no based on what I know at this church. But of course, I'm the reason why they asked me, I guess, is maybe I'm a leader, maybe I'm one of the. Usually, they would go to the church leadership to ask that question, right? They would not just pick anybody from the congregation to ask, I suppose, right? So I suppose if I was one of the leader, then I should know the situation, the truth. Yeah, I don't know. Then I feel that I should at least verify if that is true or not.
I think from my situation, I think if I was on the pastor search committee and I call a church to ask, hey, this pastor used you as a reference or this church as a reference, and I want to find out more about it, about this individual, then they need to tell me the truth, then, don't they?
Yeah, official capacity.
Yes, in the official capacity.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
in,
Which
but in
actually happened to me when
Yeah.
I was doing the pastor search several months
Right.
ago. I had to go very deep to verify something that I was not sure if it was true.
right.
So I had to ask the reference of a reference. You know what I mean? To ask, hey, I heard this. I'm not too sure if it's true. Can you explain your perspective to me? And then I had to make my decision based on my discretion.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to find the truth anyway, to go from one reference to the next rather than just go to the top reference.
Right.
But remember, the issue is, when do we know it's gossip and when do we know it's not? And when do we know? Remember, what we're saying is, in order to de-escalate intensity 6, of course, we're not there in your slide yet, but we're just assuming the fact that the nature of this is people speaking bad against somebody away from the source. The question is, and here they are, they're promoting it again because they're conversing. How do we know that it's gossip or not? It sounds like we would know in official capacity because it's prefaced by, hey, I'm in the pastor search committee. But then are we trying to say then that if it's not in the official capacity, that we will try to discourage further conversation?
I think if it was not in official capacity, whether, if somebody came up to me and said, well, I heard something about so-and-so. Can you tell me about it? I would say, no, I don't know anything about it. Or I am not at liberty to discuss it. Unless it was under an official capacity. I think.
Just maybe we will help it not escalate to intensity 7.
Right. By not sharing, even though it's wrong. I mean, the individual was wrong or did something wrong.
Okay. So Howard, what do you think?
Oh, it's very difficult when you have situations, try to resolve it and, my experience, not only at the church, but my experience while I was working. It depends on who you work with and who you discuss things with. And, there's people always, you can resolve issues with, and there's individuals, you cannot. And those individuals, you just have to know how to handle it. And but I'm glad I took this course because it gives you, 7 choices I have, and to see which one I'm in and which one, what I have to do to have it resolved cleanly and move forward. So it's tough.
How about the response that says, that's not for me to answer. Maybe you can go to other than the fact that I'm not going to answer.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't have the correct and truthful answers, the information I have is just secondhand stories, then I would of course refer that person to, okay, this is what happened between him and that person. I believe it's best you go get the information you need from that person.
But Beth, what if you know? But what if, let's say, if what happened is something that you were directly involved and you totally know the truth?
Okay. If I was directly involved, then I would speak truthfully and tell the truth. I think that would be best, but then I cannot control how that person receiving the information is going to feel or act. Does that make sense? But as far as my part, I know in my own conscience, I can feel at ease because I know I speak truthfully about the situation.
Okay. Well, let's leave that thought. Zach, you have anything to share before we close the door?
I like that. Like you kind of have that inside feeling whether it's like you're telling the truth from the right like sentiment, or you're gonna otherwise if you usually when you gossip you kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of off. So it's like maybe situation to situation you're gonna whether you're kind of just doing it like as a matter of fact kind of thing, or if it's like you kind of put your own personal agendas behind the words you say kind of thing. So it's gonna be like, or for me, I feel like you kind of are able to distinguish how you answer. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, good deal. I guess one of the conclusions we can make is, conversations outside, it's not like deleting someone's comment on your Facebook. It's not like you could manage to control everyone's comments on your post. And so discipling people on how to respond properly on issues they've heard, on issues that are official capacity, or issues that is none of their business, or whether they are in business and maybe it's not worth even making comments on. Let's hope and pray that we could coach individuals on how to better manage. Of course, we're not to the point where, eventually you're going to get to intensity 6, so I'm preparing you for this. But so much that let's hope it doesn't get there. But even if it gets there, that you will get an opportunity to speak truthfully and speak honestly and speak disciplinarily. Maybe is the word. All right, you've been good in these discussions. I appreciate all of you. Praise God. Okay, keep the conversations going, because this is what this lab is all about. It's getting you exposed to having critical putting your critical thinking, critical mindset, critical objectivity, so that when such things happen, you would know how to navigate your situations. I'm going to ask for your prayer request. When I stepped out, that was my family in the Philippines. They said that my father's heart rate went down, and now the doctors asking, is he a DNC, do not resuscitate, or is he a DNR? I'm sorry, is he this and that? So pray for my father's situation. He's a believer in the Lord, so we're really happy of where he is going, and he knows where he's going. But you know, as always, it's painful when family members go through this. So if you don't mind, Brother James, since this is your week, go ahead and close us in prayer.
Mighty and most gracious Father, thank you for being such a loving Father, almighty as you are, and all-knowing. We thank you, Almighty Father, for how you use us in our own way of life, in what we do. And I thank you, Almighty Father, for how you move us to glorify you. I ask, Almighty Father, for your hand to be upon Pastor Bong's father. I ask that you would be with him, not only to strengthen him, but to provide for his needs. Almighty Father, we know that he is in a right place spiritually, and so we just ask that you be Lord over the whole situation. Thank you again, Almighty Father, for how you comfort us, how you come to us in the times of our need, and you lift us up, you carry us through all the difficulties we face. We thank you again, Almighty Father, for your grace, your love, and your mercy, because without them, Almighty Father, we cannot function. So we thank you. And I continually ask, Almighty Father, that you use us to bring honor and glory to your name in everything that we do, in our thoughts, in our words, in our actions, and in everything that we do, that we would honor you. I pray on this, Lord Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Mr. James, blessings to all of you.
Amen.
Keep in touch, okay? We got one more week next week. We're going to try to recover from all the reports that are missing. Make sure you go to your classrooms. There are still some works that if you have not done them, do them. If the gradings are not posted yet, I apologize. I'll get to them. And you let me know if you have any questions on any of your work. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds good?
Thank you very much.
Good.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Linda,
Pastor
you have
Bong?
anything you'd like to share?
Yes, I'm sorry I missed most of the class, but we were helping my sister and we were successful in helping her find a new car.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure in class was it just James and Howard in person?
That is correct.
Okay, and then I can see Zach and Bev and Johnny online.
Johnny. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have
Thank
a good
you.
week.
Good night,
Alright, see
Linda.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
Blessings, everyone. Woo. Thank you, Mr. James. Yeah. So that it brings us back again to that hard conversations, because we know that there are some nuggets that we could learn as a church.
Yeah.
So let's pray that we get to, however the Lord wants us to share it.
Yeah. That's the hard part, I think.
That is the hard part. Yes.
Try to be sensitive to the Lord's prompting.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
By the way, what background is Bev?
Bev is
Because she talks about her elders and things like that.
yeah, she is